Curbside Pickup by Triscribe. This is an Avengers fanfiction. Chapter 1. Stars and Stripes. You have received one new message. Mr. Stark, heads up, had a change in transportation for this afternoon. He promised not to throw anything if you don't go for his legs again. Peter frowned at his cell phone, but only barely had time to text back a muffled question mark before the teacher was turning back around to the front of the room. Quickly he tucked the device back into his hoodie pocket in feigned interest in the political manoeuvres behind Henry VIII marrying his fourth wife, the German-born Anne of Cleves. He had already watched a documentary the previous week with May that went into way more detail about the wives than his history class, and so felt perfectly justified in sneaking out his phone. At least he did up until the well-worn nub of an eraser hit the side of his head. Peter's spidey sense knew it was coming, but with so many eyes around he decided against attracting attention by ducking. After bending down to nab off the offending object off the ground, the teen looked over to MJ, who stared back with her usual neutral expression and a single raised eyebrow. So Peter gently tossed the eraser back to her, then settled back in to pay attention as the teacher lecture moved on to the fifth wife, Catherine Howard. Honestly, who thought it was a good idea to let an old man with 3 kids marry a literal teenager? Side point there? Excellent point. Mr. Stark's text message managed to completely slip his mind until school let out, when Peter and Ned were coming out of the front doors and saw a crowd of students gathered around the parent pickup area of the street. Crap, Peter muttered. That's probably for me. Ned gave him a no-duh look. They started walking over, necks craning even as they tried to avoid knocking into anybody, until they stood in a spot where they could see an old-school motorcycle sitting on the curb. A tall, blonde, and very familiar man leaning up against it. No way! Ned breathed, practically starting to quiver. No way! No way! No freaking way! Peter just stared. Steve Rogers had yet to look up from the sketchbook he was drawing in, clearly aware of the high schoolers watching him, but perfectly content to ignore them. No one seemed willing to do more than whisper and snap pictures, but Peter knew that wouldn't last. And sure enough, as he stood there, someone broke the line and approached the literal living legend. That someone being MJ. She came to a stop directly in front of the super soldier and held up her own sketch pad and asked, "Realistic or cartoon?" Rogers glanced up with a blink. Peter would say he looked startled. "Little of both. You?" "Little of both," MJ repeated. "I like to draw people in a crisis. Sometimes that means exaggeration to get the point across." The captain blinked again, then slowly started to grin. "Are you the one who shows up to detention of her own volition?" At MJ's nod, he smirked. "Peter's talked about you." It was MJ's turn to blink, though she followed it up with a glance in Peter and Ned's direction. Roger followed it, Swan spotted them. "Hey, kid," he called out, closing the book and tucking it away. "Hope you don't mind the change in plans. Happy as the day off, and Tony got dragged into a shareholders meeting." Steeling himself, Peter walked forward, Ned belatedly trailing after him. "No, I don't mind. It's fine. Just would have been nice to get a bit of warning, you know?" The captain frowned. "Didn't Tony text you?" Peter felt like slapping himself. "Oh, yeah, he did. He just... Never mind. Can we get out of here, please?" "Climb on. Nice meeting you, Miss Jones." "Ned," he added, nodding to the still stunned boy. Peter didn't have time to offer anything more than a grimace to his friends before getting onto the captain's motorcycle behind him. The engine roared to life and they were off. Having never ridden one before, it took Peter a few minutes to get used to the open-air vehicle, leaning into the superhero in front of him and following his slight posture adjustments whenever they turned. He didn't mind the rushing wind, which was pretty similar to the sensation of web-slinging, but his spidey sense kept going off when they got close to cars, and especially trucks. That took some adjusting. When he felt as comfortable as he was going to get, the boy addressed the unsuspected driver. "Okay, so we've only spoken 3 times ever, and I know for a fact I have never mentioned about MJ in front of you." His words might have gotten snatched up by the wind, but Peter knew the captain's hearing was just as good, if not better, than his own. "But you talked about her to Tony," the man replied. "And in case you didn't know, kid, he's a terrible gossip. Even with Bruce, and even more especially with Clint, now that they're speaking again. And when that man starts bragging about you to the rest of us, he doesn't stop." Peter had no good response to that. "Got your stuff, or do we need to swing by home?" No, I've got my suit. I'm good." "Change of clothes, toothbrush?" "All ready at the compound," Peter replied on autopilot. "Mr. Stark got me a bunch of stuff to keep in my room there." He does like to drop practical gifts onto people's heads, doesn't he? Peter thought of the double-decker bed in his bedroom at home, and the state-of-the-art laptop and fully loaded work desk. Yeah, I guess. Did he really loan you a car for your driving test? The teen groaned and planted his head against the captain's back. Yes, and then he refused to take it back when I was done. By the time my aunt got involved, he'd already transferred the title to her name and sent over a cheque to take care of the jump in our insurance bill. He felt more than heard the captain chuckle. Yeah, that's Tony for you. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this. This is a fun one. I've been meaning to get this on for a while. The chapters are redonkulously short, so maybe I'll do 2 in the morning. I don't know. Depends on how good the views are on this first one. But knowing my Avengers content and how much you guys seem to like it, I hope it will be a well-received one. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe, hit the bell, blah blah blah. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!